The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our next webinar with NYAPT, Recovering, Rebuilding, and Renewing the Spirit of New York Schools. We're going to give folks a minute to file in, and we'll be back at 1:01. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar with NYAPT. We're so glad to be partnering with this great organization. It's New York. This is our New York State Best Practices Navigating Uncharted Territory webinar series. This topic is Recovering, Rebuilding, and Renewing the Spirit of New York Schools. We have another great panel from the task force, and we have going to get into some very specific information. We know everyone here is very hungry for information, and I'll give some more details later. But first, I'd like to introduce Transfinder's President and CEO, Antonio Sabatella. Tony, are you there? Which I know you are.
Yes, I am.
All right, welcome.
Hello, everybody. Hello, hello. How's it going? Happy Thursday. It's a beautiful summer day, midway through August, and welcome. We have another great lineup here for our NYAPT Transfinder webinar. I'm going to thank the panelists that are going to be on for today, of course. Want to thank NYAPT, and also want to thank the Executive Director of NYAPT, Dave Christopher, for allowing us to partner with you to make sure that these important resources are shared with all the schools in New York State. Of course, I think we might have other attendees from other parts of the country, but I want to just let you know that how important it is to how we're proud to be part of what you guys are doing. Is such an important aspect, and how the leadership that you have here at NYAPT, and how it's helping really the entire state. And we know that New York has really been the forefront. All eyes have been on New York really since March, and now we see that it's remaining to be all eyes on New York because of what's going on with the school reopening. That's such an important aspect. Again, today, task force, you'll hear a lot of specific things. Here at Transfinder, tons of themes, and one of the things that we're doing every week is a theme, and this week is all about teams. And so what a perfect opportunity to talk about the team here that NYAPT has put together as a task force, and just really to figure things out. And there's just so much going on, and these webinars we made these priority. I know a lot of you guys, I've seen the same names over and over again, so thank you for supporting us and giving us ideas. And we always want to get some ideas from you guys too, just in case somehow we forgot something important. But I know you guys are always talking about. It's an integral part. So thank you for the leadership you have, Dave, and then really the group, NYAPT, and really all New York State. We're proud of being right here. That's our backyard. A couple of little housekeeping things. This webinar is always recorded. We record these webinars, so you'll be able to anytime look at it. Maybe you didn't catch something. Maybe you're not taking notes. Don't worry about it. It's recorded. They're all recorded. We have so many of these things. And another items I want to make sure that about the communication. We have a great communication tool. It's called Stafffinder. We're offering this to all of our clients and also non-clients. That it's a product, it's an app that you can use with your parents and communicate them. We're offering at no cost till the end of December 31st. So I just one of those things, housekeeping. And before I really turn it over to Dave. Something about what kind of team we're here, what kind of people here in the panels. And just before we get started, we're just talking about, being on auctions, a little bit funny things. And I'm sure maybe you could talk a little bit about this, Rick. Again, it's not part of the topic, but sometimes we have to laugh at ourselves. Got to be able to have some fun, because some of these days are tougher than others, and we all know it. Some days are extremely tough. So I love that we're talking about the auctions, and how, by the way, it's a tip, if you go to an auction with your significant other and your significant other's across the room, don't wave at your significant other while there's an auction going on, because all of a sudden you might be buying something that you don't want to buy. So again, Dave, let's do it, all right?
Tony, thank you very much. And thank you for partnering with NYAPT on these webinars and everything you do for NYAPT. It's much appreciated. It's great to have a partner like you in our organization as part of us. Yeah, don't put your hand up because things will happen. And the panelists I'm going to introduce, a couple of them put their hand up at some point, and they've been involved in a lot of these webinars, and they offer a lot of great information for our members and for the participants on the webinars. So I'm going to introduce them. Bill Harvey, you all know Bill. He's the co-chair of the NYAPT Task Force on Resuming Transportation Operations. He's from the Honeoye-Lima School District. Rich Gallagher, also co-chair of the task force. He's from the Bayshore Schools. And we've got a couple new people on the webinar today. Our plan here is to try to get some, different people from across the state on these webinars to just talk about what's going on in their area. So we want to welcome Donna Hackett, who's the transportation director from the Pembroke School District. Donna's a longtime member of NYAPT and an officer of NYAPT. And welcome, Donna. And also John Spacht from Southwestern School District, way out by the border of Ohio, somewhere out that way. Welcome, John. And I want to compliment John for two things. One is John's also a local board member, and I often call him for information because he's wired in some good information sources. A couple weeks ago, I called him, and he was in North Dakota on vacation, and actually participated in a couple activities for us when he was on vacation via his cell phone. So thank you, John, for doing that. And we certainly appreciate your knowledge and expertise. And certainly all of you, we appreciate your knowledge and expertise. Last but not least, I want to introduce our referee, Rick DeRico, from the director. He's the director of public relations with Transfinder, and Rick will moderate this webinar. Thank you, Rick, for doing this. He's become an expert in school transportation over the past few months, working with NYAPT and others, learning all about the business. So today we're going to talk a lot about what's going on in the various school districts in terms of getting ready for school. Some of the topics will be safety drills and training, and vendor and supplier relationships, cleaning and disinfecting, the usual things. But the unique part of this is the perspectives of the different people that are on the webinar today. So every time we hold one of these webinars, people respond back, "Oh, I learned that new today. I didn't know that." So, and last but not least, you'll learn you're not in this alone. So, Rick, I'll turn it over to you, and we'll start the discussion.
Thanks so much, David. I appreciate it. Thank you to all of our panelists. I know things are very busy for you, and we do not take it lightly that you take time out of your busy day to join us. And just referring to Tony's comment about auctioneers, the point is here, if you make any kind of twitch whatsoever, panelists, I'm probably going to call on you. So don't like, you have to sit on your hands maybe to be very careful. But I know you have a lot to share, and I want to make sure all of our attendees. I also want to thank you for coming. I know that things are very busy for you as well, and we want you to know that you are involved. This is very much an interactive webinar. So we're watching Bridget Moore, who's watching from behind the scenes, and I'm watching as well the questions that come in. And so while we do have a slate of questions, Dave put together some great ones, and I did as well. Maybe not as great as Dave's. If you have a question, we will go to those as quickly as we can. So if you have a specific question, or you want to specifically target somebody too, maybe Donna says something and you want to follow up, please just, if you have someone specific, mention that in your question, and we are monitoring that. Before we get started, I want to read one quick thing. This is from the Boston Globe. They surveyed their readers, and they asked a question that says, should schools reopen? And they got a response of about 3,000 of their readers. And here's what their response was that they found. 73% favored continuing remote learning in their area. 15%, only 15%, supported fully returning to in-person learning, and just 12% favored the hybrid model of both in-person and remote learning. And again, that's just neighboring Massachusetts. So my first question, and then I want to ask all of our panelists to kind of get into just a little bit of a description of who you are and what school, what your district is like, so we just get a sense of who you are. So Dave, actually, I'm going to wait for you to answer my question, but I want to get a sense of what is the feeling in New York State, and our panelists, if you want to address that as well. Do they favor in-person Do they favor more of a remote learning? Do they like the hybrid model? Because it may not be the same as what they saw in Massachusetts. But for starters, if you don't mind, David, I'm going to ask if Bill, Richard, Donna, and John, if you could all just tell us a little bit about your job, and also your school district. And we'll start with our newbies. So we'll go with John, Donna, Rich, and then Bill.
Hi, John Spath. Like Dave said, I'm the transportation supervisor here at Southwestern Central School. I'm also vice president of the school board at Frewsburg Central School District. So I do everything from equipment purchases for the district, running the whole transportation department, and that's about it. And the board stuff's more on the education side of things.
Tell me a little bit about your district. How big is it?
So we were about 1,400 students. In March, when we shut down in March, we were transporting about 1,100. So we're fairly small, but not so small out here. Chautauqua County is filled with a lot of small districts, so we're kind of medium-sized out here.
Very good.
But yeah.
Thanks, John. Donna.
Hello. I am the transportation supervisor at Pembroke Schools out in Western New York, right on the Erie-Genesee County line border there. So we have big schools in Erie County next to us, and then our little rural schools in Genesee County. So I get a great flavor for both. We have about 1,000 children in our district, and right now we're all just waiting to find out, what the next numbers are. A lot of surveys out to our parents to solicit information and what their feel is. So when we get into our stats, I can give them to you straight off of parent surveys. We've had 3 of them so far, so we're ready to roll. Yeah.
Sounds good. Thanks, Donna.
Mm-hmm.
Rich Gallagher. I'm from Bay Shore Union Free School District on Long Island. I'm the Director of Transportation and Purchasing Agent for the school district. We have about 6,500 students. It keeps going up and down with private and parochial. We're on the South Shore of Long Island. We have some bigger school districts to the north, in the middle of Long Island, and we're located about 55 miles east of New York City.
Great. And Bill, last but not least.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good to see everybody again. Bill Harvey, Director of Transportation and Security for Honeoye-Lima. We're a school district of about 2,300 students. We're located, much like Donna, in the near proximity to the Rochester metro area, so we have a lot of bigger schools immediately to our north and smaller, more rural districts to our south. So we've are in the midst right now of doing our parent webinars as per the governor's instruction on the 7th, and we're carrying that out. We did our first last night, and we'll do another tonight and another Tuesday. So that's proven to be an interesting topic. And I think, Rick, as you said, where does New York stand on reopening? I think it depends on where you are. It seems to vary significantly. And the one thing that, I think I'm finally beginning to understand is that the governor's message that, really we have to have the school community, and that means the teachers and the parents, the staff on board, right? So we'll open in the fashion that is acceptable to our community. So that's what I think we're all wading through right now.
That's great. Yeah, David, did you have any perspective on, thanks so much, Bill. Did you have any perspective on that survey and how that plays out in New York State? I know it is a vast state and, very, very distinct regions.
We're obviously a very diverse state. And to Bill's point, I think that it's a very regional approach. I talked to some directors in some parts of the state, and they're uncertain about their districts are uncertain about reopening. Some, in fact, have delayed a couple, 3 weeks to a month, and others are ready to go now. So it kind of depends on, the region. Some regions of the state are more greatly affected by the COVID virus and situations that occurred, and others are less affected. So I think that has a lot to do with it in terms of individual school districts. To Rich's point, I think Rich can speak probably better than I, but some schools apparently building wise are more able to spread their kids out than others. So a lot of it has to do with, regions and local school districts in terms of their ability to meet the SED and the DOH guidelines.
This is kind of a broad question, but can you guys give me a sense of what the mood is like at both your district wide, but also on your staff? What's the mood like as we get close to school reopening?
We did a public forum last night, like Bill was talking about. The biggest question was, do the students really have to wear their masks all day long? Not how they were getting to school, how they were doing this, but do the students actually have to wear their masks all day long? And we're saying we're going to have mask breaks when the teacher or a person in authority allows them to, when everybody is seated and they're 6 feet apart. But that seems to be the biggest worry about whether they're wearing masks all day long.
With the feeling that they prefer them not to wear the mask, it sounds like
some didn't. That's one of those, Rick, that if you actually tried to keep the numbers, it would be very difficult. It's all across the board. Some don't, some want it. Some want them to wear masks and face shields. It's all across the board.
Bill, you were shaking your head. Remember, I warned you, if you move, I'm going to.
We had, of all the topics last night in our district forum, that was done much like this in a webinar type format, and we had facilitators gathering questions. And I'll bet you, 30 or 35% of our conversations in our evening revolved around masking and what is the protocol, what will be allowed. So there's a lot of apprehension there. With so many other pieces, as Rich said, but it's that dominates the conversation, and I think it's because of what Rich said. Some people don't think it's necessary, and other people want everybody masked and wearing a face shield. Those are good outer boundaries on what the expectations would be.
And you can't please everybody, obviously, with those. So where do you land? I mean, has your district landed on an answer for those? And then Donna, you mentioned that there were surveys. I do want to get to you in a second.
Yeah.
So where have your districts landed on that?
Everybody will wear a mask unless the teacher in charge of them allows them to have a mask break. They will be allowed to wear goggles or face shields if the parents so desire. But they have to provide the face shield and the mat and the goggles if they want their child to wear them.
And Bill, same thing?
Yeah, we rolled out a protocol that the superintendents in our region worked with the Department of Health to formulate. And I think really that's what staff and parents need is clarity, right? They don't need the gray area. They need to understand exactly what the expectation is and how it would be. So we announced what the protocol would be: a mask break in the morning, a mask break in the afternoon, mask break at the lunchtime, how long the break would be, where it would have to be. I think the more facts and the more we can help people understand how it will work, I think the more comfortable they'll be. It's the unknown that is really upsetting and creates angst.
Very good. Donna, you mentioned that you had a few surveys that went out. Different questions, or is it just different snapshots at different places in time to kind of get a chance to see where the mood is moving to?
Well, ours were to definitely get the feel of the district if they want to send their children back to school, if they want to put them on a bus, if they want them to come at the parameters that, it's a little limiting because we're not doing some of the activities that we generally did before. So in the Pembroke survey, we had 78% of our parents wanted their children to get back to school, which is just huge support. And that's the mentality of our region. So that's what you got to go with I feel that's what you have to go with is kind of the feeling there. I have a number between 54 and 64% of the kiddos riding the bus. So that significantly cuts down our space on the bus, but we're going with, masks as the barrier. I believe seats are a barrier as well. So our parents are very comfortable with that. As people have said before, we're going to expect the expectations have to be defined. So when you get on the bus and you get off the bus, you'll have the mask. When you get into school, when you get out of school, you'll have a mask. Inside the schools, we have barriers that are coming in now. So, the clear desk barriers and table barriers and things like that, because we're trying to reduce the amount of mask time. And our parents are very favorably looking at that, saying, okay, I think my kiddos can live with that. And that's where we're going with that. So our surveys, we're trying to get the feel of the parents. And, if we go back to school, will you let us go back to school with these things in place?
Really good. John, what's your sense in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, I would say we're about the same thing. We're doing a lot of surveys. We have, I would say, close to 80% want to be back in from what we're hearing now. But that online, or what they call around here the click, that kind of jumps up and down as the parents hear, what's going to be expected. It won't be the same as before. As far as in school, desks are all going to be, 6 feet apart. So I think while they're at the desks, they'll have barriers and stuff. They won't need masks, but they'll have to have them with them anytime they were to, get up, because you'd have to put that on anytime you're within 6 feet of somebody. The school buses, masks on everybody. And that's how, like Donna said, that's what we're going to use for the barrier. We've got the high back seats. We're going to try to limit it to 21 students on a full-size bus if we can. That leaves the seat behind the driver empty. And we'll try to maintain that as the social distancing as much as possible on there.
And is it regular community? Is it AB days, or is it everybody every day?
Oh, no, we're going back to full days.
Here, yeah. Our school here is every other day, half the students. Frewsburg, where I'm on the school board, their hybrid model is a little bit different. I believe it's up to 5th grade is every day, and then 6 through 12 is going to be an every other day schedule.
So here's a question.
I have a question.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Dave.
So mask use seems to be a big important piece of the parents' concerns. How are you as transportation managers training your drivers or advising your drivers to deal with that issue, given masks are mandated on school buses?
They have check, and they have extras that they will carry to pass out to those students that don't have one on when they arrive at the bus. But during the meetings with the parents that we're doing with the community, we're stressing that all students must have a mask when they get to the bus stop or get out of the car at the school. And we have masks to pass out at both locations. But
similar approach for the other districts?
Yeah, the school bus is an extension of the classroom, so the code of conduct that would be adhered to in the school, we're going to expect that same code of conduct on the bus. And the governor did say that we can't refuse transportation if there's no mask, but we're not going to put all the students on that bus in jeopardy. So we would, at that point, if that did come to that, we'd send a different bus for those students.
Oh, okay.
But we're letting the parents know that it's mandatory to be on the bus. You have to have a mask. So we haven't run into anybody yet has refused that says they're going to refuse that.
It's funny you should just say that, because our very first question just popped up from Frank, who asked, what will happen for those who won't wear not just I forgot my mask, but they will not wear a mask? What do you do in that case? And then that leads into my next question about responding to parents that may be complaining. But what will happen in that situation? I know that I don't mean to get negative, but it's a question from Frank. I'm going to blame Frank for this. What happens when you have someone that says, you know what, I'm not wearing a mask?
Well, that was the point of my question. I asked that question for a purpose, because when you read a lot of in the media today, you see where people in restaurants and retail stores are getting harassed, and in fact, some of them physically abused when they try to enforce the mask policy. So what kinds of things are we going to do to support our drivers, to train our drivers how to deal with that?
In our last parent survey, it was to ask the parents what their concerns were. So when they addressed their concerns, the school responded with the parameters of those things. If you don't wear your mask so many times, it's infraction of the school rules. and you will, because we're doing 10-week blocks of commitment to in school or out of school, on the bus, not on the bus. So if that happens, you could be asked to go off, do the online if your child can't seem to adhere to the rules that are being put in place. So we're making a very definitive statement of this is what we're doing. And if your child, just like they can't behave on the school bus, they're going to lose their bus privileges. This is part of the behavioral impact we're going to have now.
If I could share, much like the others, every student has to wear a mask unless they're medically exempt. So we're asking for medical exemptions to be received by the district ahead of school start so that we can understand who those students are and provide them the appropriate services to safely get them and other students to and from school. And obviously, if they're not able to wear a mask on the bus, they probably can't wear one in the school building, so we'll need to make special provisions for their educational program. In the meetings I'm doing with my drivers now, and there's a couple of things we talked about for this webinar, and that was communication with parents, but also communications with our teams, right? Many of us have been hard at work for several weeks trying to pull together our restart plans, and while we know them very well, there's some anxiety among our staff because they may not be as familiar with it. So we started staff meetings, and we're doing them weekly, and one of the big things that drivers worry about is, what am I going to do when a student gets out? And the non-compliance, Rick, that's what you brought up. So a student that refuses to wear it. And I think that to have a protocol in place and clearly communicate that to our staff helps set them at ease so they know how it will be handled. And like John, our step one is to notify the base. And that way the driver's handing it off and they're not the bad guy. If there's not a parent there, as per the governor's regulation, and rightly so, we can't be leaving students unattended out on the road somewhere. So we will pick them up, we will appropriately social distance, get them into school, call ahead, let the school know so somebody meets the bus. And the school has made it very clear, and we covered it again last night in our meeting, that it is not optional. You wear a mask or you can distance learn. There's your choice. So it will be dealt with through the code of conduct, as John said, in a very strict manner. So we've assured our drivers that you will not have repeat offenders. This will not string along. It'll be taken in a very serious manner.
Right.
I agree with Bill. We're doing basically the same thing. Unless they have been cleared to be a medical person, they're going to get on the bus, but we're going to move the kids around so that somebody might have to double up, but because they have a mask, they can sit closer to somebody else, and the one with the mask will be, without the mask, will be 6 feet from the nearest student on the bus until we get to school. And then it's like any other discipline report at the school, the principal will have to, or the assistant principal, take care of the problem so that it's resolved and we don't have another repeat the next day.
Is your office personnel, and maybe your drivers as well, are they being also kind of getting special training on how to, get unique questions this year that they maybe have never gotten in the past? Those complaints that parents, it sounds like they're all very positive, Donna. You mentioned that seems like they're very upbeat, and they were upbeat during the early part of the pandemic with the parades and the food delivery. But that could change. I mean, that could, and I don't want to be negative, but I mean, there could be frustrations. And so is there do you write a script for people to say, here, when you get a phone call from an irate parent about the mask or about social distancing, either it's not happening or why are we doing this or whatever, is there special training that you need to do with your teams to handle those kind of calls?
In the office, it's just me, so it's easy. I can handle it. On the bus, on the road, I've advised my drivers, of course, to tell the parent if somebody seems upset. By all means, radio me and ask me a question. Let me answer it for them. And also, here's a ton of business cards. Give me a call so we can talk about it. The side of the road is never a good idea to sit and chat.
Right.
We want to direct that response correctly.
Okay, John, you look like you had your hand up.
No, I was just agreeing with Donna there. Same exact scenario here. I just have drivers tell them to call me. I'm the only one in the office.
Yep.
And if I happen to be out driving, I get back to the parents. I'll sit here till 8 o'clock at night if I have to call everybody back that left a message. So.
Well, I think there's value in that. I'll go to you in a second, Bill. I think there's value in having one point person in a lot of ways. So whether you were a large district or a small district, the idea of one person, so you're not getting your messages skewed even slightly, because there's paper thin margins on getting it right. So I think that's a great model. Bill.
Yeah, I wanted to comment. I'm fortunate that I have a little bit of staff. We have a few people in the office, and we just did a training towards the end of the day yesterday with how to deal with upset parents, and just some refreshers and reminders on tactics to use and being understanding, and to help them to understand that you're compassionate to the situation. It's not our fault. How can we help problem solve? What are next steps? What are options? So we're going through that with our staff. The community, a lot of people in our communities have already been very stressed by the pandemic and everything that's going on. They might be out of work. We don't know what hardships they're dealing with. So maybe the triggers are different, where normally they would have more tolerance for something and they become emotional more quickly and promptly. So yeah, we're training for that, and we're also training our drivers to understand the company line, as Donna said. So make sure the drivers have coaching on how to communicate with parents and where to direct concerns. Very important.
You can just tell all the drivers to have them call Dave. Just call Dave Christopher.
Okay.
Don't say that too loud, Rick, because there's a couple on this panel that might do that.
Robert asked a question about whether districts are adding monitors or aides to help enforce these rules, making sure their hands are cleaned and all those kind of things. Is that happening? I'm not seeing any. There's no yes.
We are not. It's a budgetary item, and we don't have the staff or the money to put more aides on the bus than we need for special education.
True.
Okay.
Well, we have several sub drivers. We have quite a list of sub drivers. We're fortunate to have a good team there that helps us to carry out a lot of our athletic responsibilities, with that season being waylaid, and all the courtesy transportation, late buses, everything being set aside here to get school going. I have a lot of people that need work, so I have told all of our substitutes, monitors, and drivers that they're welcome to come in. If they want to work every day, I will have them out and about on buses, helping the drivers to teach social distancing and help monitor masks and help acclimate the kids. So
that's great.
But we have not gone out and purely hired extras. I don't have any extras to hire, really. No candidates.
I can tell you that there are some school districts across the state that are hiring monitors. In talking with State Ed recently, there's a small handful that are taking that step, putting a monitor in every bus.
Great. So some specific questions that, I'm sorry.
The only thing to remember is that those additional monitors, if they're not connected with a special education student, are not state aidable. So they have to keep their payrolls separate for those individuals.
Good point. So a couple specific questions, just for starters, how are you managing State Ed mandated safety drills this year?
I'm doing them as usual.
So I can jump on that a little bit, because I did speak to State Ed yesterday, day before. I've lost track of the days. The counsel that we received, and we'll put something out in news and notes on this as soon as it's vetted. But the counsel we received from State Ed was that it's required as normal, that you have to conduct your safety drills as you normally would. Any kind of a virtual drill is not permissible. For those of you that are doing AB days or alternating weeks, the counsel was that you can conduct the drill, for instance, on an A day on this on or before the 7th A day. So at the beginning of the year, you have 7 days to conduct your drills from the beginning of school. So if you're alternating like that, as long as you get it done before the 7th day, you're in compliance, and you're fine in terms of the drill. That was
Yeah,
really the only change that they really allowed us to do.
They also made
And they did-
note that if our dates ran late, that we should note on our drill documentation that it was COVID related. You know, we're in a hybrid model where I'll have kids in for 5 days and then kids they'll be off for 5 days and next kid's in for 5 days. So, you know, if we extend that window of time, anything that's outside what the expectation would be, make note that it's COVID related. And the other thing that the state ed did recommend or suggest was that perhaps for the first evacuation drill that we not use the rear emergency door, because many times we have to have physical contact with the kids or the kids spot for other kids, right? So we're not maintaining social distancing. So perhaps at least to get started, we use the front door as an evacuation route, with the situation being the rear exit would be blocked, and then see how things go and work subsequent drills into the rear emergency door exit.
Mm-hmm.
This is really a quick question from Jennifer. Just wanting to know, how many students are you putting on a large bus?
21.
So we'll just go down the line. Bill, Richard, Donna, and John. How many are you putting on a large bus?
21.
So I am, in our district, if necessary, we have said that we would load up to 2/3 capacity. I will tell you, so far it has not been necessary. We've done a great job with the community, with finding out who's going to drive, who's going to walk, things like that. So most all of our schools, we're down in the 20 to 25 range. The only exception being our elementary school, where we'll be loaded a little bit heavier, but we're still getting in some opt-out information there. But it appears that in all instances will be like 35 and less.
Okay, great. Richard?
I'm scheduling for 21, except for some of my private and parochial schools where I can look at the names and see if they're in the same family, and I'll double them up in the seats. Like for one of my schools, I have 23 kids going to the school. I'm not going to start another bus for 2 students. Between students being absent and siblings, I'm trying to stay right on that 21, 22 student line.
Very good. Donna?
Ours are naturally falling into that position of probably about 2/3 full they'll be. And our school's very comfortable with the mask and the seat as barriers. So if it is to be slightly larger than that for whatever reason, we haven't gotten any pushback yet.
Okay. And John?
We're same thing. We're actually requesting that everybody sign up for transportation this year, because we want to know exactly who's going to ride the bus. That everybody will be assigned a seat, and we're going to try to keep it below that 21 mark, at all possible.
Okay. Amanda asked a question going back to the bus drills. She wants to know, are drivers being instructed to have the students stay in their seats and one by one get off through the exit doors? Is that how it works?
Well, that
That's
wasn't, we were given specific instructions on that, but I would say that, it would make sense to provide some distancing to the best of your ability as you conduct the drill. Bill, you were there. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely, and keep in mind, that's one of the things that we're charged with teaching our students, right? We're supposed to be teaching the kiddos how to social distance while they're waiting at the stop, while they're boarding, and while they're disembarking. So we've actually instructed our drivers that when they unload, we want them to facilitate the unloading and back down through the aisle and almost like dismissing the students, and let the next one. We put 6-foot delineating markers across the roofs of our buses, and have the kids maintain their social distancing. So I would do the exact same thing on a drill, but before I did that, I would preface those remarks to the kids that if this was a real emergency, social distancing becomes secondary, right? And they'll get that same message in the school building. Being the director of security here, I'm working on school drills as well. And we're going to maintain social distancing during drills with emphasis on the fact that that is not a priority in a real emergency.
Very good. Do you have a backup plan for management staff who might be out of service due to COVID or just sickness in general? And if so, what is it?
Telephone. They can call me at home. That's what we did when we were shut down between March and June. I'm still capable of talking on a telephone, even if I'm at home.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
However, what if you're truly, truly sick? God forbid. You know, Donna, you're the only person there. Have you thought about that? You know, and even in a large operation where you might have, you know, several people in the office, typically each person does some specified work that maybe the next person next to them doesn't do every day. Is there cross training going on? This is a particularly tough discussion for, you know, smaller districts where there's not a lot of staff to cross train and, you know, do the work. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do have my trainer that can take over in the office, and yay, Transfinder, I can do all my stuff at home if I need to, answer questions. I just tried it out for the first time last night, so I'm really excited about that. It will seriously facilitate because we already did have a scare. I, in 4 days, got told I was having shoulder replacement 2 weeks ago, and my superintendent went, what are you talking about? I'm like, dude, we're okay, we got this. And that's what we're doing. We're utilizing my trainer, my Transfinder stuff, and I'm very, the office is organized that somebody could, you know, come in and help us if we needed it.
Did you just say that you call your superintendent dude?
Oh yeah.
Oh, I like that. That's awesome. Anybody else I love it. Anybody else have any thoughts on that, or
John, you have anything?
I mean, I just spent 3 weeks on the other side of the country, and I was working on my computer every day. I do have one of my bus drivers is an excellent assistant. She works a few hours every day in the office, and she very well could keep things running in the event something happened. But even when I'm on vacation or not here, I would suspect even if I was in the hospital, they'd figure out a way to connect my computer in there. So
that's great.
I don't know.
Very cool.
In our district, we've got, much like Donna, we've got some drivers that maybe are trainers and SPDIs, examiners. So, you know, our plan is to keep them available and loop them in a little bit more so that should we suffer loss of the office staff, we have somebody that's a little more acclimated and able to step in and keep the ship on course here while we're out. But that is definitely a concern we have. Imagine there's 3 of us in the office, and if all 3 of us got quarantined for 14 days, we'd be in a quandary. So we're trying to get some people cross-trained on just at least the daily operations.
Very good.
Yes, I was kidding before, but while I was in rehab, I had my laptop at the rehab facility, and I was doing work there. But I have to say that if you're using a contractor, you can rely on the contractor to keep, you know, to help prop you up while you're not available. The contractor is generally capable of keeping things going while you're not available.
So what about handling, I know I'm giving you guys a lot of worst case scenarios, but I think some people who are attending may have some of these questions too. You know, how will you handle a situation where a vendor or their supplier shortages in the event of, you know, they shut down because of a high infection rate within their company? Have you thought about that as well? I know I'm giving you a lot of contingency plans here to be thinking about, but anybody thought about that?
I haven't thought a lot about that, and I think that I think we have enough parts on hand, and we're fortunate enough to have a fleet rotation that leaves us with a good solid lot full of buses that are reliable and dependable, and we have some spares, right? So if something did go down, my biggest concern on a vendor front would be if I can't get fuel, because that's a showstopper. So worst case scenario there, we'd take the district credit card and go down to the AM PM and fuel up, right? So. I'm not overly concerned with that. I have a lot of other concerns that occupy my time with that, but you know, it's a good concern. It's a good thought.
There's a pretty good dealer network for most of the parts that we use on our buses. I mean, if you're running IC buses, there's international dealers all over. You don't necessarily need to go to the bus dealer. Same thing with Bluebird. You know, they're running the same engines. Whether you've got a gas engine or diesel engine, there's other dealers that carry those parts. So
you can use the neighboring districts.
Yeah,
we share with our neighboring districts all the time on whether it's technology, information, or parts. So, you know, make sure and reach out to your neighbors.
So stay friendly with your local neighbor district.
Definitely.
Always.
The only thing I have to add is we're probably going to use more buses because of the AB days and the number of kids on a bus. But generally, there should be more buses available because you don't have AM, any earlies or lates and no sports till at least the 21st. So there should be enough buses available. The thing would be drivers.
Okay. Now, Amanda comes back with another question, wanting to know about refreshers. How is everyone handling the missed spring refresher and the current fall refresher? Bill, you're shaking your head on that one. So,
yeah, when David and I had the conversation with SED and we talked about that, and much like the drills, we will not be allowed to do a virtual refresher. So we talked about having the refresher taught. Really, it needs to be in the presence of an SBDI. So, we would have to have in-person training, and if we have large groups, we'd need to break the groups down small enough, or be in a space where everybody could be social distance. Or you could have multiple SBDIs. Donna talked about neighboring with your district. I have a couple SBDIs, but some may only have one. But if we have 3 or 4 SBDIs, we can use 3 or 4 rooms, split our team down. We have the technology because we're doing it now with remote learning, right? Where we have the RecordX boards, we have the headsets and microphones. So we can run a refresher live, but maybe broke into small groups all simultaneously. So, but that really, in the gist of the message was that they're not ready to move the refreshers to an online format. You would agree, right, Dave? Anything to add to that?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And when we say no virtual, we're saying like a Zoom call with your drivers who may be sitting in their homes. It has to be, as Bill says, an in-person with an SBDI present in each group.
So we talked a little bit about.
So just to add to that, if you miss the spring refresher, if you're unable to do the spring refresher with your drivers, you can do the spring refresher when you resume operations again, and then follow up with the fall refresher a little later in September, maybe October. You don't have to do them all prior to the start of the school. Remember, there's a little extra wiggle room there. And we were told back in the spring that the spring refreshers could be done when you resume operations again.
Very good. Rich, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I called my contractor when I thought this might come up, and he told me that they've set up their classroom for 44 chairs. So they're reserving 33 to a class. They have 11 classes next week, and they're planning on doing all their drivers next week in the 11 classes.
Great. So morale on your staff. We talked a little bit about this yesterday in advance of today's webinar. How is the morale on your staff? I know that's, you have a lot of people, so it could be pockets of, people feeling one way or another way. So how is morale? How do you keep morale up or build it up? Give me a sense of how things are happening in your offices there. I'll start with Donna, because it sounds like morale is really good where you are.
It is. We're very fortunate. Like I said, we have a like-minded district, and it starts from our superintendent and just kind of flows down. We are positive in what's going on. When people do have concerns, we definitely look into them and then reach back to that person to, answer their questions. That helps a lot too. And of course, I do have a few staff that are very concerned over different things, and we just try to treat them all with respect and ask that they respect our opinions as well. So there's a lot of that goes on. I have, lost a driver and a monitor who found other jobs because they just weren't sure what was going on with this. So it's not that it doesn't happen, because it did. But we're in a good staffing position. And like I said, even the staff that wants to wear masks, or the staff that has, different concerns and stuff, they're treated with respect just as the students and the parents are. And I think that helps a lot. And we keep that squelched. If somebody starts to get amped up, we address it, and it seems to handle quickly.
Good, good. Anybody else?
I'll just say that the easiest way we've found is to make sure you answer every question your staff may have. If you don't know the answer, tell them you're going to go upstairs and find an answer, but then get back to them.
Yep, that's good. Good advice.
Yeah, we have, I guess my advice in that area would be just the communication. We're very fortunate. The morale, I think, overall is very strong within our organization here. Much like Donna, I think it's a culture that starts at the top. We have strong support from the community. It's the marble jar theory, right? And some of you have probably heard about that. As we build equity, there may be times right now we may be taking some marbles out of the jar, but at least they're there to work off of. And I think it's important to support the staff and loop them in. The more we can communicate with them and make them feel valued and involved because they are valued, the more important it is. So we have a great team, and the folks are really in a pretty good place. That said, I had a driver resign yesterday because of COVID, so it does happen. But you have to look really at the overall big picture, and we've got some folks that are very excited and eager to return, and our job, we feel, is to best prepare them to deal with these new challenges that lie ahead.
So does crying or anything like that help maybe get a driver to stay with you? Singing, if you leave.
I tried.
No? All right.
I tried, Rick. It didn't work.
All right.
Oh, ugly picture.
It is, yeah. Sorry. I'm sorry about singing there, too. That was a Chicago song for anybody who doesn't know it. John, anything on your end in terms of keeping morale up?
Like Bill said, communication is key. Things are changing day to day, so we just try to keep people updated. We've got a larger group of people that are in the more vulnerable age group that our governor would call them. So there's a little anxiety there. So most of them want to come back, and they're not quite sure they're going to be able to. So we're just, changes every day. Hopefully within the next 2 weeks, we'll have that all ironed out. So, but the morale is pretty high here. The drivers miss the kids.
That's a good point too. I think I just want to commend you all. It says a lot about your leadership. It takes a special, there are some leaders that get frantic and, they're humans. We're all human beings, but if you guys have this morale, I think that says a lot about how they feel at peace, knowing that you're in charge. I want to ask a question. I'm going to start with David. And I'm going to make a rule I've never done before in a webinar, but a lot of times when somebody answers this question, I'm going to tell you what it is, so I'll give you a little time to think, is how are, maybe some lessons you've learned in the midst of leading during this very difficult time that's made you a better leader, that maybe goes into whatever you do going forward. But here's the rule. You can't say what he said or what she said. So if Bill says communication, which now no one can say, I want to reiterate what he said, because we need to have, I'm sure there's a lot of lessons learned. So I know that's a lot of, that's a tall order. And I'm going to start with David, just because you guys have showed tremendous leadership in, New York State is ground zero in all of this. And you have showed really not just state leadership, I think in some respects, national leadership, and NYAPT has as well. So what's something that you've learned in the midst of this that's made you a better leader that you take forward for other crises that may come up down the road? And then I'll go to Bill, Richard, Donna, and John.
The new guy goes last.
I'm glad I'm going first, because if I was John, I'd be a little nervous right now. Well, I guess what I've learned is, you all know I'm in a new job. I'm doing something different than I've done for 35 years. And then suddenly this happens. And I think I'm humbled, and I'm very privileged, I think, I've learned to do this job because of the professionals like yourselves. And I'm not just blowing smoke here. I truly mean this. There's people out there who have risen to the occasion and done this work and solved these issues, and they're level-headed, they're professional, they're good to their people, and you'll learn as a leader myself by watching those things to emulate some of those qualities and be a better leader. I'm not leading numerous people like I used to, like you folks do, but I do I do have leadership responsibilities, and I guess that's what I've learned. This is a very humbling experience to be able to sit here and watch this happen, and see the professionals out there doing the work that, quite honestly, would probably break a lot of people if they had to do this.
So really, one of your takeaways is actually learning from others, right?
Absolutely. To summarize it.
Good. Bill.
I guess I'm gonna, some of the things probably we already knew, but it just really drives home the significance. And one of those is that we don't walk this path alone, right? The leadership doesn't happen. It's not a one-man show. At least it shouldn't be. So I think that, the work that our district has done here, our leadership team, as far as putting together our return to school, we have leaned hard on each other, regardless of the role we serve on this leadership team. Within our department, I formed early on our own departmental return to school task force, and I'm just very pleased with the drivers and their input in the monitors and my mechanics. And I think that we could probably hold the row alone, but it's a lot easier to have the hands beside you helping you, and we all learn from each other. So that's probably one of the most important things, is to understand the significance. And I've taken away the essence of team, really, and getting through the challenges we've faced.
That's great. That's super. Rich.
I guess the biggest thing for me was to try and stay up to date and be willing to accept change. There's a lot of things that we're doing now that we would have told people not to do in the past, like rear load a bus and other things. But keeping up to date and being willing to accept change and communicating, I guess Dave already said that, but communicating with your peers. I think I've talked to Bill more in this last couple of months than I've talked to him in 2 or 3 years that I've known him at NYAPT. Just keep bouncing your thoughts off of somebody else and be willing to accept the change and pass it on to your peers.
That's great. Very good. Donna.
My takeaway is actually to have slowed myself down a little bit. As having been a former volunteer fire chief and now into this supervisory for school bus drivers, you make a lot of quick decisions. But because the challenges are so new, I've learned to actually pull myself back, slow down, digest what's being told to me, and before I make that decision, truly feel things out a little bit better. So I'm slowing myself down in making the changes and the decisions to get through this.
Sometimes people can put upon you that sense of like rush, what do they call it? The tyranny of the urgent, and make you feel like you're on their pace. And so it's almost like I'm going to take a step back.
Yep.
And then I can make a kind of a clear decision, not feeling rushed.
Correct.
That's great. John.
I would say the technology piece. I mean, I've always been a data decision driven decision maker, but just using technology now with the video conferencing and I've been making videos to put on the school website to get information out. I mean, those are things that I never would have done before. And just the technology as a whole, I think, is going to make all of our jobs better, more, in the future. It's just going to work out real nice for everybody. You can take all the good things from it when we do get back to a sense of normal.
That's great. That's super. Well, thank you all for that. That is all very valuable. Time is almost up. I'm going to ask David if you would give us some closing remarks. I'm going to ask Tony to come back on as well after you're done, David, and then I'll just close this out. But David, any parting words?
Well, I've just observed a great leadership workshop in the last minute or two here. Typically, we get on these webinars and we talk about all the things we're going to do to deal with the COVID crisis on school buses. But what this just became was a great exercise in leadership in terms of all of the comments that you folks made. And I certainly appreciate that. And I stand by my comment. I learn something new every day, and I learned a lot just listening to you professionals. So thank you for doing this. I think we all learn a lot by having these town meeting style webinars, if you will. I hope that the attendees learn something from this as well, and you know, feel free to sign on for more of these in the future. And again, thank you, panel, for doing this. I know that you're all busy, and but this is a very valuable thing for our industry. Tony, are you on? Are you going to say a few words?
I am
Close
on.
out.
I am on. So
There you are.
I got to tell you, I have a very similar takeaway. They just said, Dave, obviously leadership plays a big role. I think, you know, we always talk about team, and obviously a team is, I have so many things my father would say about these type of things. And let me tell you about a theme. I'm going to give you one little proverb, and I'll be quick about it, because I do believe in team and then leadership. My father always had these great proverbs, and one of them is always farm related. And one of them was about this rooster. So if you guys know about, on a farm, you have the dominant, the older rooster crows, and then all the other ones, the smaller ones, follow. So it's really like follow the leader. So he would always say, when you hear the little rooster crows, the big one or the more dominant or the older one has already sung, which means, think about it, what you guys do affects your team. So when you hear the team making some comments, it comes from you guys, comes from the top. So it's a very important aspect. So yeah, I truly believe in team, but you set the tone. You are the big rooster at this point. So I just want to remind everybody about that. So yeah, it's a funny takeaway, but it really is true. That's how it's nature, and you guys are the leaders, and you set the tone and make sure you do that. So that's my biggest takeaway, guys. And again, thank you for sharing so many great things today.
That's great. Thank you so much, Tony. I want to thank Donna, Bill, Rich, John, and again, David. Thank you so much for your leadership and for NYAPT's leadership. I want to thank all the attendees for coming on board. One thing I want to leave you with is if you have a story of something that you're doing in your district or a neighboring district that has been innovative in how to deal with some of the situations we're facing right now, please send it to mystory@transfinder.com. We really are trying to curate as many of these stories and share these tips. As you know, we really believe that, like you all have said, you know, this is a community and we can all learn from each other. So these may become down the road, they might be another webinar, or they will become a white paper, or both. So until then, I just want to thank everybody who came on board, and stay tuned for our next webinar. We'll be sending out an email when that will be. And until then, just have a great rest of your day.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having us.
Have a nice day.